The observation station floated in the darkness between stars, watching and waiting like it had done for 847 cycles around the galactic. Corps Ambassador Clethra stood before the massive viewing screen, her 4 eyes tracking. The yellow star at the center of the display saw, the humans called it Soul, or sometimes just Sun, with that casual disregard for formality that characterized everything about them behind her. Monitoring stations hummed with activity as junior analysts pored over data streams from the Forbidden System, the Galactic Council. Had been clear from the beginning, observe but never contact Earth was classified as developmental. Though that term didn't mean what most species assumed that. Humans weren't primitive, they were Dangaroos. Clethra had studied the reports until she could recite them in her sleep. Every civilization that reached for the stars did so over millions of years, slowly and carefully, learning from mistakes that claimed individual ships rather than entire colonies' humanity. Had gone from atmospheric flight to landing on their moon in 66. Your 66 years, the Viridian people took longer to perfect. Pastries. What made it worse was that humans didn't seem to understand how reckless they were. They built rockets that exploded regularly and called it testing. They sent living beings into space in metal cans with barely functional life support and called it brave. They split atoms for weapons before they fully understood the consequences, and then possibly stopped themselves from total annihilation through something they called mutually assured destruction, which was possibly the most human concept ever devised. We won't destroy ourselves, because we're too good at destroying ourselves. The entertainment broadcasts were worse. Clethra had made the mistake of watching human fiction early in her assignments. Needed 3 days of meditation therapy afterward. Humans told stories about themselves surviving impossible situations, fighting off alien invasions with primitive weapons, terraforming hostile worlds through sheer stubbornness, and something they called duct tape. The xenoanthropology department had spent 2 years trying to understand why humans were so obsessed with duct tape before concluding it was some kind of religious artifact. Then they discovered it was just sticky fabric, and humans genuinely believed it. Could fix anything. Clethra had written 17 reports explaining why first contact would be catastrophic. The council agreed humanity would be left alone until they matured, which everyone quietly acknowledged might never happen. She turned from the screen as junior technician Yip fluttered into the command center, their translucent wings catching the blue glow of the monitors. Yip was young for a glimmerwing, barely past their first molting, and enthusiastic in the way that made senior staff nervous. Ambassador, I found something interesting in the archive room, Yip chirped. Their voice, like wind chimes in a storm. Cleth felt a familiar sense of dread. Nothing good ever started with I found something interesting. What kind of something? She asked carefully. Old equipment, Yip said, hovering excitedly near a storage panel that Clethra didn't remember authorizing anyone to open. Theirs, a device marked Universal Emergency Beacon, and I thought maybe we should test it to make sure it still works. In case of actual emergencies. You didn't? Clethra said. Her translator chip struggled to convey the appropriate level of horror in her voice. I just pressed the activation button to see you pressed it. Every analyst in the command center stopped working. The room fell silent, except for the background hum of equipment and Yip's increasingly nervous wing flutter. It was just one button, Yip said in a small voice. The label said it was for emergencies. And I thought, what did the label say exactly? Clethra demanded. She was already moving toward the archive room, her movement tentacles propelling her faster than she'd moved in years. Had fluttered after her. Universal distress signal broadcast to all registered sapient worlds. But I didn't think. No, Clethra said. You didn't think the archive room was small and dusty, filled with equipment from the early days of the observation mission there. On a pedestal that should have been in a locked vault, set the beacon. Its status light pulsed green. Activalether's primary heart stopped. Her secondary heart worked overtime to compensate. How long ago? She whispered. Maybe 10 minutes? Yip, offered I. Came to tell you right away after I realized 10 minutes. Clethra repeated. She did the calculations in her head. Signal traveled at quantum-entangled speeds. Every registered world in the galactic database would have received it simultaneously, including Eartha. Humans had just received their first confirmed message from an alien civilization, and it was an accidental distress call from a species that had been secretly watching them for nearly a century. "We need to send a cancellation," Clethra said. Already moving back to the command center, draft a message. Accidental activation. "Please disregard. Do not respond." "Is that really going to work?" One of the analysts asked. Everyone knew the answer. They'd all read the reports on human behavior. Humans didn't disregard things. They investigated, they questioned, they poked at mysteries, until the mysteries gave up and explained themselves. The cancellation message was sent anyway, because regulations demanded it. Clethra watched the transmission indicator and prayed to the 17 gods of her homeworld that somehow, impossibly, humanity would be the first species in galactic history to actually follow instructions short of 7 minutes later. The prayer was answered, unfortunately, not in the way she'd hoped. The response came through on the same quantum channel. The beacon had used it appeared on every screen in the command center simultaneously to words in clear galactic standard, translated through mathematical constants that proved the humans understood the universal language of physics. Why not? Clethra stared at the screen somewhere behind her. Yip made a sound like a deflating balloon. Analysts laughed, then caught themselves and pretended to cough. They want to know why they shouldn't respond. The communications officer said, "Unnecessarily Tor." Tor drafted a second message with shaking manipulator limbs. "Critical. You are under protective observation for your own safety and development. Contact will result in cultural contamination. Protocol 7 per Galactic Council regulations. Your species is not ready for integration into galactic society. We repeat, do not." She never finished. The transmission system overloaded and shut down. Safety feature designed to prevent accidentally broadcasting classified information by the time they got it back online. Earth had already sent another message. This one was longer. Clethra read it and felt her remaining heart sink. Protective observation. The message read, "How long have you been watching? What are you protecting us from? Are you in danger? Do you need help?" That last question, those 4 words, they contained everything the Council had feared about humanity. Their first instinct wasn't suspicion or fear or even excitement. It was concern after being told they were under surveillance for their own good. After being essentially told they weren't good enough for galactic society, the humans' immediate response was to ask if their observers needed assistance. "Get me a direct channel to the High Council," Clethra said quietly. "Tell them we have a Category 1 first contact situation, and tell them," she added, watching as a third message from Earth began coming through, "that the humans are exactly as terrifying as we thought they were." Yip drooped in the corner. Wings folded. "I'm really sorry." They whisper. Cleth surprised herself by reaching out and gently patting the young technician's head. "You might have just changed galactic history," she said. "I'm just not sure if that's good or bad yet on the screens." Earth's messages continued. One more curious, more concerned, more quintessentially human than the last. The forbidden signal had been sent, and humanity had answered exactly the way everyone knew they would, with questions, with care, and with that uniquely human assumption that impossible problems were just puzzles waiting to be solved. Dr. Sarah Chen had been staring at computer screens for so long that her eyes felt like sandpaper. Radio Telescope Array in New Mexico had been running automated searches for 43 years. And in all that time, nothing plenty of natural radio sources, pulsars, quasars, the background hum of the universe. Itself just nothing artificial, nothing intelligent, nothing that said you are not alone. She was considering calling it a night when the alert sounded not the gentle ping of an interesting signal, but the full-blown klaxon that the system reserved for patterns that matched the search parameters with extraordinary precision. Sarah's coffee cup hit the floor. She didn't notice the signal was strong, clean, and structured in a way that natural phenomena simply couldn't produce. It used mathematical constants as a framework: pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences, universal languages that any technological civilization would understand. Her hands shook as she began the verification process, running it through every filter and analysis tool they had: false positive checks, negative equipment malfunction probability, 0.003%, artificial origin confidence, 99.7%. "Oh my God," she whispered, then louder, Oh my God, her assistant Marcus burst through the door, still pulling on his jacket. What? What happened? Is the array on fire again? Better, Sarah said. Her voice came out strange. Tight with emotion, Marcus. I think we just received a message from aliens. The next hour was chaos. Woke up the rest of the skeleton crew. They ran the analysis 17 more times. They checked and rechecked and triple-checked, because this was the kind of thing you didn't get wrong. The message was short. Once translated through the mathematical framework, accidental activation of emergency beacon. Please disregard this transmission. Do not respond. Marcus leaned back in his chair. They accidentally called us. Apparently, and they want us to just ignore it. That's what it says. They stared at each other. Sarah had devoted her entire career to this. Moment fought for funding when everyone said SETI was a waste of resources. Sat through countless meetings where politicians and scientists alike told her that searching for extraterrestrial intelligence was romantically futile. She'd kept the program running on grants so small they had to share equipment with the undergraduate astronomy department. And now, finally, contacts that they were being told to pretend it never happened. We should call someone, Marcus said. The government, the UN, somebody official, and tell them what? Sarah asked. That we got a wrong number from space. Well, when you put it that way, the second message arrived before they could decide this. One was longer and significantly more panicked. Critical. You are under protective observation for your own safety and development. Contact will result in cultural contamination protocols 7 per Galactic Council regulations. Your species is not ready for integration into galactic society. We repeat. Do not. The message cut off mid-sentence. Sarah and Marcus sat in silence. They've been watching us, Marcus said finally. Protective observation. Sarah corrected. Like we're animals in a zoo. Maybe they have good reasons. Maybe. Sarah agreed, or maybe they're just afraid. She thought about that humanity wasn't perfect. They nearly destroyed themselves a dozen times over. Nuclear weapons, climate change, bioweapons. That weird period in the 2020s when artificial intelligence briefly became sentient and everyone panicked before realizing the AI just wanted to help, but they'd survive. They'd add a pet. They'd learn it slowly, sometimes painfully, but they'd learned them. Now someone out there had decided they weren't ready for contact without asking, without giving them a chance. Sarah's hand moved to the reply. Protocol interface. What are you doing? Marcus asked. Something probably stupid, Sarah. They specifically said not to respond. I know they said our species isn't ready. I heard them. This could cause an actual intergalactic incident. Sarah paused, her finger hovering over the transmit key. Marcus, what if they're wrong? What if they're right? Then we'll deal with it, Sarah said. But I didn't spend 40 years searching for extraterrestrial intelligence just to be told I'm not good enough to talk to them. She typed 2 words. Why not? Simple, direct, quintessentially human. Marcus put his head in his hands. We're going to start an interstellar war with a 2-word message, or Sarah said. Pressing transmit. We're going to get some answers. The response didn't come immediately. They waited. Monitoring the quantum channel, the messages had arrived on. Sarah called the director of the facility. Who called the National Science Foundation? Who called someone at the State Department? Who probably called someone even more important within 3 hours. The small control room in New Mexico was packed with government officials, military personnel, and scientists who'd materialized from apparently nowhere. General, whose name Sarah didn't catch, took charge. Dr. Chen. I need you to cease all transmissions immediately. Already sent, she said. One message content. I ask why we shouldn't respond. The room erupted half. The people started yelling about protocols and chain of command. The other half wanted to know what exactly she'd said and how a woman in a dark suit held up her hand, and everyone fell silent. Everyone out except Dr. Chen and her immediate team. She had that kind of voice when the room cleared. She sat down. I'm Director Williams, NSA. Though that doesn't matter right now because this is bigger than any one agency or government. She looked at Sarah. What made you respond? Curiosity, Sarah said honestly, and maybe spite. They've apparently been watching us for who knows how long and never bothered to say hello. Sarah crossed her arms. Then they accidentally call and tell us we're not good enough to join their galactic club. Yeah, I'm a little spiteful about that. Williams almost smiled. Fair enough. The console beeped another message. Sarah's heart jumped as she read it aloud. Protective observation confirmed for duration of 87 years. Monitoring began with first radio broadcasts in 1936. Observation purpose is to ensure humanity develops along safe trajectories before contact. Current assessment. Not ready for contact. Please acknowledge understanding and cease communications 87 years. Marcus whispered, "They've been watching us since before computers, since before the atomic bomb." Another analyst added, "Before spaceflight, before the internet." Director Williams stood up. Dr. Chen, "I need you to draft a response, ma'am." "You started this conversation," Williams gestured at the screen, "and something tells me that, however this turns out, we're already past the point of no return," Sarah thought. Carefully, what? Do you say to aliens who think you're not ready to meet them? What do you say to watchers who never introduce themselves? She began typing. Protective observation for 87 years? What are you protecting us from? Yourselves? Each other? Are you in danger? Do you need help? Marcus read over her shoulder. You're offering them help? Why not? Because they're probably way more advanced than us. So, Sarah said, people help people, Marcus. That's what we do. She hit send. Before anyone could stop her, Director Williams read the message and laughed. It was not a comfortable laugh. You just offered aid to aliens who've been covertly observing us for nearly a century. Seemed polite. Sarah said, over the next 12 hours. Sarah's small control room became the unofficial headquarters for humanity's first contact with alien life. Messages went back and forth, each one adding pieces to an incredible picture. There was a galactic council, thousands of species, civilizations, millions of years old. They were all terrified of humanity, not because humans were aggressive. Though the military history probably didn't help, not because humans were stupid. Though the reality TV broadcasts definitely raised questions. But because humanity did the impossible so casually, it didn't even realize it was impossible. My messages painted a picture of a galaxy that moved slowly, carefully, learning from mistakes over geological timescales. And then there was humanity, going from horse-drawn carriages to moon landings in a single lifetime, creating and then controlling artificial intelligence, engineering biology like it was software, and treating every setback as a temporary problem rather than a permanent limitation. They're afraid of us, Marcus said, reading through the compiled message thread. Because we don't give up. Sarah looked at the timeline of human achievement laid out on the screen. When you compressed it like that, it did look kind of terrifying. Maybe that's not a bad thing. She said the final message of the day came from someone calling themselves Ambassador Claythra. Emergency Galactic Council session convened. Formal first contact delegation being assembled. Request meeting at neutral location within Sol System within 72 hours. Please respond with acceptance or denial of meeting request. Sarah looked at Director Williams. We're way above my pay grade now, right? Way above mine too, Williams admitted, but I think you should write the response anyway. Sarah typed, we accept. We'll need time to assemble our own delegation. International Space Station proposed as meeting location. We look forward to finally meeting our neighbors. She paused, then added, also, you could have just said hello any time in the last 87 years. Just so you know, Marcus snorted, that's definitely going to start an incident. Good, Sarah said. Hitting send, I think it's time they learned that humanity doesn't do well with being told what we can't do. The Galactic Council chamber had stood for 3 million years, a testament to stability and careful deliberation in all that time. An emergency session had been called exactly 47 times. This was number 47. Ambassador Claythra stood in the center of the speaking circle, feeling the weight of 10,000 eyes from 100 species, all focused on her junior technician Yip, huddled behind her, trying to make their already small frame even smaller. Let me make sure I understand correctly, High Chancellor Morvin said. Their voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. A junior technician activated a beacon that has been dormant for 8 centuries. This beacon sent a signal to every registered sapient world, including the quarantined human homeworld. and the humans have not only responded but are now asking if we need help that is correct. High Chancellor Clethra confirmed the chamber erupted. The Concordian hive mind's 1,000 voices spoke as one. Immediate memory suppression of all humans who received the transmission. Absolutely not. Countered the Xylophy delegation. Memory suppression is a violation of cognitive sovereignty. Then destroy their communications infrastructure, suggested Ambassador Krell of the Etherian Empire. Make it look like a natural solar flare. Also a violation, the Xylophy pointed out, of what? Krell demanded basic decency. The Peaceful Meditation Collective, who rarely spoke at all, offered their solution. Perhaps if we do nothing, the humans will simply forget about the messages and return to their normal activities. Every being in the chamber who had studied humans turned to stare at the collective's representative. You haven't read the reports, have you? Clethra asked. Telder Thorn stepped forward. He was an ancient being, even by galactic standards, and had devoted the last 2 centuries to studying humanity. The Peaceful Meditation Collective's proposal,
Ow!
while well-intentioned, shows a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology. He activated a holographic display. Observe. Human response to mysteries. The display showed a rapid compilation of human behavior. Ancient humans seeing the stars and immediately wondering what they were. Seeing the moon and determining to reach it. Encountering diseases and refusing to accept them as inevitable. Facing extinction events and engineering their way to survival. Humans, Thorn continued, do not forget mysteries. They obsess over them until the mysteries surrender also. They have already involved their planetary governments. The hologram shifted to show Earth's communication networks lighting up. News spreading across the planet's surface like wildfire. Suppression is no longer an option. Thorn said the information is too widespread. High Chancellor Moravin raised one of their primary appendages for silence. Elder Thorn, you have studied the humans extensively. What is your assessment of their likely next action? That depends on our response, Thorn said. If we maintain silence, the communications panel lit. UPA Jr. Operator's voice came through. Apologies for the interruption, but Earth has sent another message. Clethra felt her stomachs drop. Display it. The message appeared in the center of the chamber for all to see. We understand you need time to figure out how to respond. That's okay, but we want you to know if you're in actual danger. If that beacon was a real distress call, we're here. We might not have faster-than-light travel yet, working on it though, but we're pretty good at solving problems. Just let us know what you need. The chamber fell absolutely silent. They think we're in danger, someone whispered there. Offering assistance, another voice added. They don't even have FTL and they're offering to help us. Krell stood up. This is exactly why we quarantine them. They're insane, or, said a soft voice from the Viridian delegation. They're kind. Everyone turned. Veridians were not known for speaking in council sessions. They preferred to observe and vote silently, but this one, a young diplomat named Sorellin, continued. We've spent 800 cycles watching them, studying them, afraid of them. But look at that message. She gestured to the hologram. Their first response to contact isn't aggression or fear. It's concern for us. It's naivety, Krell countered. They don't understand the galaxy, no, Elder Thorn said slowly. Ambassador Sorellin is correct. This is not naivety. This is values, human culture. Despite its many flaws, has a core principle. You help those who need help. Period. He pulled up more data. Their mythology celebrates this. Stories of heroes who sacrificed themselves for strangers. Their history is filled with individuals who risked everything to save others they'd never met. Their contemporary society, despite its problems, has entire organizations dedicated to helping beings on the other side of their own planet whom they will never see. But they're also violent. Krell insisted they have weapons that could sterilize their own world had. Thorn corrected past tense. Humanity reached the point where they could destroy themselves and chose not to. They dismantled most of those weapons. They created international laws against their use. They looked at their own capacity for destruction and said, no more of and listen to the debate. Their ancient mind processing possibilities. What happens if we continue to refuse contact? Thorn took a breath based on psychological modeling. Humanity will assume we are either in distress or hostile. If they believe we're in distress, they'll come looking for us. Clethra finished exactly another display activated, showing projections, human space programs receiving massive funding increases. International cooperation on a scale never before seen in human history. Crash programs to develop faster than light travel humans, Thorne explained. Have a saying, hold my beer, roughly translated. It means observe what I can do when properly motivated, if humanity believes someone needs help. They will move their entire civilization to provide that help, and if they believe we're hostile? Moravin asked, then they'll prepare for war while simultaneously trying to establish diplomatic channels because humans somehow hold contradictory positions simultaneously and call it Strategy A. Concordian voice spoke up. What if we tell them the truth? That we've been observing them because they frighten us? I actually think that might work, Thorne said. Humans appreciate honesty. Even uncomfortable honesty. You want us to admit to humanity that we, the Galactic Council, collective civilizations that have existed for millions of years, are afraid of them. Yes, that's absurd. It's also true, Clethra said quietly, isn't it? We are afraid of them. The chamber fell silent again because she was right. Every species present had read the reports. They'd all seen the projections. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were aggressive. They were dangerous because they didn't understand the word impossible when faced with problems. Humanity's first instinct was to solve them, not avoid them when told something couldn't be done. They took it as a challenge when confronted with their own limitations. They engineered around them. I propose, Morvan said finally, that we make formal first contact. The chamber reacted with surprised murmurs on our terms. The High Chancellor continued, we meet them in neutral space. We explain the situation honestly, and we offer them provisional membership in the Council. That's unprecedented, Krell objected. They haven't even achieved FTL. Neither had the Viridians when we made contact with them. Sorlin pointed out we had developed stable warp theory. A Viridian elder corrected we were ready. The humans have developed 17 different theoretical frameworks for FTL travel. Thorne said, granted, most of them violate known physics. But that's never stopped them before. Moravin called for a vote. It wasn't unanimous. Nothing in the council ever was, but the majority agreed. First contact would be made, officially, carefully, and hopefully before humanity decided to make contact on their own terms. Ambassador Clethra? Moravin said, you will lead the delegation? Clethra's eyes widened. High Chancellor, I'm not qualified. You're the human expert currently closest to their system. You've been observing them longer than anyone else present, and you've already been communicating with them. Moravin's expression might have been a smile. Their species had smiles besides. You've handled them well so far. They asked if we needed help. Clethra protested. That's not handling them. That's barely keeping pace. Exactly, Moravin said, which makes you the most qualified. 3 hours later, Clethra stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Unity, watching Sol grow larger on the view screen behind her. A delegation of 12 species prepared for the most unusual first contact in galactic history. Ambassador, the communications officer said, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. Of course we are, Clethra muttered. Display it. The message was simple. We accept your meeting proposal. International Space Station confirmed his location. Our delegation is being assembled. Looking forward to finally meeting you also. You could have just said hello any time in the last 87 years. Just so you know that last part. That casual addition of what was essentially a complaint about being secretly observed for nearly a century. Who had been allowed to come along as some kind of cosmic punishment. Fluttered nervously. They sound angry. They sound human. Clethra corrected. She found herself making a sound that her species used for resigned amusement. Prepare for orbital insertion. She ordered. The International Space Station had never been designed for diplomatic summits with alien civilizations. Then again, neither had anywhere else on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chen floated in the cupola module. Watching the alien ship approach, it was beautiful in a way that defied description. Organic curves mixed with geometric precision, glowing with soft bioluminescent light that shifted through colors she wasn't sure had names in any human language beside her. Ambassador Patricia Morrison from the UN adjusted her position despite 3 days of crash course zero-gravity training. She still moved like someone who expected floors to exist. I feel ridiculous. Morrison muttered, we're about to meet representatives from civilizations, millions of years old, and we're doing it in a tin can that's held together with solar panels and hope. Hey, Sarah said, this tin can has kept humans alive in space continuously for decades. That's pretty impressive. Tell that to beings who probably have ships that can cross galaxies, General Chen Zhang. No relation to Sarah, drifted overhead, been adamantly opposed to holding the meeting in space rather than on Earth, arguing it put humanity at a tactical disadvantage. Then someone pointed out that if the aliens wanted humanity at a disadvantage, they'd had 87 years to arrange it. The alien vessel is holding position at 2 kilometers, he reported there. Requesting permission to approach, Morrison took a breath. Granted, the next 30 minutes were a masterclass in diplomatic choreography. The alien shuttle that detached from the larger vessel was sized to fit through the ISS docking port. Though Sarah suspected it could have been any size they wanted, the docking itself was smooth. Professional. Practice. These beings knew what they were doing when the hatch opened. Sarah got her first look at Ambassador Clethreth. Viridian was roughly humanoid in shape, but there the similarities ended, for eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, skin that shifted between blue and purple, and movement tentacles that seemed to serve the same purpose as arms, but with far more flexibility. Ambassador Morrison, Clethra said through a translation device that made her voice sound slightly musical. Dr. Chen. General Zhang, I am Ambassador Clethra of the Viridian Diplomatic Corps. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize for the unusual circumstances of our first contact. Morrison extended her hand, then remembered that might not be a universal gesture. Clethra solved the problem by extending a tentacle tip and gently touching Morrison's palm. Apology accepted. Morrison said, though, we have a lot of questions. I imagine you do. Clethra gestured behind her. May I introduce the rest of the delegation? What followed was a parade of beings that would have seemed impossible a week ago. A Concordian whose multiple bodies moved in perfect synchronization. Oliphie, who looked like living crystal. A Glimmerwing, that was Yip, the technician who'd started this whole thing, whose translucent wings caught the light like stained glass. And Elder Thorn, he looked almost human. Aside from the silver skin and eyes that held far too much time, Elder Thorn, Sarah said, you've been studying us for 217 years, he confirmed. You're not what I expected. Few things ever are. Dr. Chen, they gathered in the station's largest modules. Someone had thoughtfully removed the sleeping bags and protein bar wrappers. The humans floated on one side, the aliens on the other, with a space between them that felt both physical and metaphorical. So, Morrison began 87 years of observation. A galactic council we never knew existed. And you've decided we're not ready for contact. Did I get that right? Essentially, yes, Clethra confirmed, though I should clarify. It's not that you're not ready. It's that we're not ready for you, Sarah. Blinked, excuse me. Thorn took over every species that has joined the Galactic Council. Did so after millions of years of slow, careful development. They learned from mistakes over geological timescales. They developed technology incrementally. They reached for the stars with patience and caution, and we didn't. Sarah said you went from controlled atmospheric flight to landing on your moon in 66 years. Clethra said you developed nuclear weapons before you fully understood atomic physics. You created artificial intelligence and then befriended it instead of destroying it, which terrified everyone, Yip added. Then seemed to remember they weren't supposed to speak and hid behind Clethra. You treat impossible problems as temporary inconveniences. Thorn continued, your scientific method is basically try it and see what happens. Your engineering philosophy is, it's not stupid if it works. And your approach to setbacks is, hold my beer, General. Zhang frowned. You're afraid of us because we're innovative? We're afraid of you because you're relentless, Clethra corrected, and unpredictable. And frighteningly competent when motivated. Morrison leaned back, or tried to in zero gravity. Let me get this straight. We're being told we're too successful to join your club. It sounds absurd when you say it that way. How else should I say it? Clethra's skin shifted to a darker purple. Ambassador Morrison, may I show you something? She activated a holographic display. It showed Earth's history compressed, empires rising and falling, technology advancing, wars devastating, peace emerging, and through it all, humanity adapting. This is 8,000 years of human development, Clethra said for comparison. The display shifted another planet. Another civilization. Their development looked like a gentle slope. Millions of years of slow, steady progress. This is the Viridian people, Clethra continued. We took 4 million years to develop from basic tools to spaceflight. We learned caution because we had time to learn it. She switched back to Earth. You learned to fly, and within a lifetime you were in space. You discovered the atom, and within decades you were splitting it. You created computers, and within 50 years they were smarter than you. And instead of slowing down, you accelerated. Sarah felt something strange. Not pride, but a dawning understanding. You're not afraid we'll attack you, no. Thorn agreed. We're afraid of what you'll do to the galaxy once you're part of it. What we'll do? Morrison asked. Change it. Thorn said simply, the Galactic Council has existed in relative stability for millions of years. Civilizations rise and fall slowly. Progress happens incrementally. Then humanity arrives, and General Zhang prompted, and you'll look at millions of years of established protocols and say, but why? You'll see problems we've accepted as unsolvable and say, have you tried this? You'll take our careful, stable civilization and shake it up. Sarah Finnish-Eclothra made a gesture that might have been a nod. Elder Thorn believes this is necessary, that the Council has become too cautious. To set in our ways, I'm not sure if I agree. But after the last 3 days, I think I understand his point. Morrison crossed her arms. A gesture that looked odd in microgravity. So what happens now? You've made contact. We know about you. You know we know. Where do we go from here? That, Clethra said, is partly why we're here. The Council is offering humanity provisional membership. Provisional? General Zhang's eyes narrowed. There would be conditions, Thorn explained. Observation periods, technology transfer limitations, restricted access to certain regions of space, so we'd be members. But not really, Sarah interrupted. Second-class citizens of a galactic community we just learned existed. Probationary members. Clethra corrected. Until you demonstrate stability. How long? Morrison asked. Between 500 and 2,000 years. Depending on various assessments. The humans looked at each other. General Zhang laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You want humanity to accept second-class status for potentially 2 millennia? It's standard procedure for species that live for thousands of years. Maybe Morrison cut in humans live maybe 100 years on average. You're asking dozens of generations to accept being lesser members because you're afraid of change. The tension in the module suddenly felt physical. Sarah saw Yip literally shrinking back, their wings folding tight. Ambassador Morrison, Clethra said carefully, I understand your frustration, do you? Morrison's voice was sharp. Have you ever been told you're not good enough? That you need to prove yourself worthy of basic dignity? For centuries. We're trying to be fair. Fair would have been saying hello 87 years ago. Sarah touched Morrison's arm gently. Let's not make decisions in anger. Morrison took a breath. Nodded. You're right. I apologize, Ambassador Clethra. This is a lot to process, I understand, Clethra said, which is why we're not demanding an immediate answer. Take time. Consult with your people. We'll remain in orbit and available for further discussions, actually. Sarah said slowly, I have a question, of course. What happens if we say no? Every alien in the module went still. No one has ever refused council membership, Thorn said, but we could? Technically, yes. But why would you? Because maybe we're not interested in joining a club that spent nearly a century watching us, never thought to introduce themselves. Sarah said, maybe we're not interested in being junior members for longer than our civilization has existed. Maybe we want to meet you as equals. Not supplicants. Morrison looked at Sarah with new respect. Dr. Chen has a point. We're offering you access to thousands of civilizations, technologies beyond your current understanding. 3 months had passed since the meeting on the International Space Station. 3 months of negotiations, fights, arguments, and occasional breakthroughs. Ambassador Clethra had spent more time in Earth's orbit than she'd ever planned. Watching the blue planet below and trying to understand the beings who called it home, the unity had become a semi-permanent, fixture in Earth's sky. Visible on clear nights as a bright star that didn't twinkle. Children pointed at it. Conspiracy theorists screamed about it most. People just accepted it as the new normal because humanity, Lethra had learned, was remarkably good at accepting the impossible and moving on. The negotiations had been unlike anything in Council history. Humanity refused to accept probationary membership. The Council insisted it was necessary. Humanity pointed out that they'd survived nuclear weapons, climate change, and Twitter without galactic supervision. The Council countered that those were exactly the reasons supervision was needed. Around and around they went. What made it interesting was that humanity wasn't negotiating as one. Voice Earth sent different delegations. Scientists like Dr. Chen, who wanted unrestricted knowledge exchange. Diplomats like Ambassador Morrison, who wanted formal treaties. Military leaders like General Zheng, who wanted security guarantees. And a rotating cast of representatives from the 207 nations that apparently couldn't agree on anything except that the aliens were real. How do you govern yourselves? Cleathra had asked Morrison during one particularly frustrating session. Barely. Morrison had replied with a laugh that might have been crying. We argue. We compromise. We muddle through. That's chaos. That's democracy. How does anything get done? Eventually, and with a lot of coffee, but slowly. Through the chaos, something emerged. Not the clean, orderly integration. The Council had planned something messier, more complicated, and possibly more interesting. The final session was held not on the ISS, but on Earth. In Geneva, the Galactic Council delegation had initially refused, citing contamination protocols. Then Dr. Chen had pointed out that they'd been contaminated for 3 months and asked exactly what the Aptones thought would happen if aliens walked down a street. Mass panic. Yip had suggested, or Sarah had countered. People would want selfies. She'd been right. The alien delegation's arrival in Geneva had caused a sensation. But not panic. Crowds gathered. Yes, security had to hold people back. Definitely, but the overwhelming response was curiosity, excitement, and an alarming number of people asking if the aliens wanted to try. Pasaclethra sat in the UN Assembly Hall, surrounded by representatives from every human nation, and felt the weight of history. Whatever happened in the next few hours would define human galactic relations for generations, maybe longer. Secretary General Adaimi called the session to order. Ambassador Clethra, Elder Thorn, honored delegates of the Galactic Council, we thank you for your patience over these past months. Humanity has deliberated extensively on your offer of provisional membership. Clethra braced herself in 3 months of negotiations. She'd learned that when humans said they'd deliberated extensively, it meant they'd argued until everyone was exhausted and then made a decision anyway. We've concluded, Daimi continued, that we cannot accept the terms as originally proposed. No surprise there, however. Adayemi smiled. We have a counter-proposal. Thorn leaned forward. This was new. Humans weren't supposed to counter-proposithy. We're supposed to accept or reject. Morrison stood, carrying a document that looked suspiciously official. The United Earth Coalition, representing all nations of this planet, proposes the following. Instead of provisional membership in the Galactic Council, we suggest a partnership agreement. Partnership? Clethra asked. Not membership? Not traditional membership? No. Morrison confirmed. We propose a relationship of equals. Humanity agrees to certain restrictions. No military expansion beyond our solar system for 50 years. No use of weapons of mass destruction in space. Adherence to basic galactic standards for first contact with other developing species that's reasonable, Clethra said slowly. In exchange, Morrison continued, the Galactic Council agrees to full knowledge sharing. No restricted technologies except those that pose immediate existential risks, cultural exchange programs, and recognition of human sovereignty within our solar system. And Sarah added, standing beside Morrison, we want to contribute. Thorn asked to the Council, to galactic civilization. Sarah explained, you've been afraid of what we'll do. What will change? So let's make it official. Humanity will offer our perspective, our problem-solving approaches, our innovation, your chaos, General Zhang added with a slight smile in return. We learn from civilizations that have existed for millions of years. We gain perspective, wisdom, patience, things we admittedly lack. Morrison said it's a trade. Clethra said, not a hierarchy exactly. Clethra looked at Thorn. The ancient being's expression was unreadable. The council will need to deliberate, of course. Adami said, take whatever time you need, but Ambassador, I think you should know, this is not a negotiating position. This is our answer. You're saying it's this or nothing. We're saying, Morrison clarified, that humanity has lived without knowing about the galactic community for all of our existence. We can continue doing so if necessary, but we'd prefer not to. We'd prefer to build something together, but not as lesser partners, Sarah added. We've spent our entire history being told what we can't do, what we're not ready for, what's impossible. And we've made a habit of proving those assessments wrong. We're not trying to be difficult. General Zhang said, we're trying to be honest. Humanity won't thrive under restrictions we consider unjust, but we will thrive in partnership with those who respect us. Clethra felt something shift in her understanding this. Wasn't humans being stubborn? This was humans being themselves. Direct, honest, and unwilling to accept limitations they hadn't agreed to. I'll present your proposal to the council, she said, but I should warn you. This is unprecedented good, Sarah said with a grin. We're good at unprecedented. The council's response took 2 weeks too. Weeks during which humanity watched the sky and wondered, during which the Unity remained in orbit. A silver reminder that the universe was bigger than anyone had imagined during which Sarah Chen received a Nobel Prize for making first contact, which she called probably the easiest Nobel ever because the aliens called us when the council's decision came. Clethra delivered it personally. She landed not at a government facility, but at the radio telescope array in New Mexico where Sarah worked. Sarah was in the control room when Clethra arrived, going over data from a Pulsar ambassador, Sarah said. Setting down her coffee, should I get the official people? No, Clethra said. I wanted to tell you first. You started this. You should hear it first, okay? Sarah said her heart was beating fast. The council has accepted humanity's counterproposal. Sarah blinked. They what? With conditions, of course. There are always conditions. But the fundamental framework, partnership rather than provisional membership, knowledge sharing, cultural exchange, recognition of sovereignty, all accepted. Why? Clethra made a sound like wind chimes. Elder Thorn made a compelling argument. He said that the council has spent millions of years maintaining stability, which is good, but stability can become stagnation. We've become cautious to the point of timidity, afraid to take risks, afraid of change, and he said humanity is exactly the opposite. You take risks constantly. You embrace change. You look at the impossible and say, watch this. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Sarah sat down. She'd expected a fight. She'd expected years more of negotiation. She'd expected to hear, no, there's one more thing. Clethra said the council wants to make it clear. This partnership means humanity will have a voice in galactic affairs. Your perspective will be heard, your innovations will be shared. That's good, and your mistakes will affect more than just Earth. Sarah looked up at the ambassador. You're warning me. I'm reminding you. Clethra corrected. Humanity has a saying. Elder Thorn told me. With great power comes great responsibility, Spider-Man. Sarah said automatically. I'm sorry. The quote, it's from Spider-Man. A comic book character. Clethra stared at her. Your species derives philosophical guidance from illustrated entertainment. Sometimes the best truths are in stories, Sarah said. But yes, I understand. Humanity is being given a chance to participate in something bigger than ourselves. And that means we need to be responsible. Can you be? Clethra asked honest questions. Sarah thought about it. I don't know. She admitted, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to move too fast sometimes. We're going to push boundaries and question rules and generally be a pain, I know. But we'll also bring new ideas. Solve problems in unexpected ways. And probably make things more interesting. Clethra's skin shifted to a warm blue. Elder Thorn said something else. He said humanity's greatest strength isn't your intelligence or your innovation, it's your hope.